Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Langer at the Mic, where we will be talking about the Cowboys midseason report because it is the bye week for the Cowboys, and we are joined by two fellow Cowboys fans from the College of Sports Media, Mr. Matt Brewer and Mr. Connor Ford. How's it going today, boys?
Great, Mike. Ready to talk some Cowboys and their disappointing, to say the least, 2020 season.
Oh
Very
yeah, of
much,
course.
yeah.
Not
How's
a
it going
fun
there,
year
Matt?
for Cowboys fans.
For
No.
sure, for sure.
Interesting year, though. Interesting.
Very interesting, and that's what we're going to get into today. Right off the top, and by the way, of course, if you're listening on YouTube or Spotify, Apple Podcasts, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, give a big thumbs up on this video. I'd really appreciate that, especially from if you're from CSM. Do that. But anyway, so getting right into things right now, let me just ask you guys, what is your best summary as to how the Cowboys went from contending for the Super Bowl at the beginning of the season, or talked about contending for the Super Bowl, to now contending for a top three draft pick?
I feel like it happened really quick. Like we knew like this. And it was a mix of, I think um, the defense was way worse to start off than everyone thought it was going to be. A lot of people thought, and I thought that it was going to be an improvement on the previous year. I mean, I know we never even got into the season with Gerald McCoy, but moves like that were the type of thing that had a lot of people, including myself, thinking that it might be an above average defense. And we found out very quickly that it was a below average defense, even though now it's starting to pick up a little bit. And on top of that, obviously the Dak injury, uh, and and then it just started to tumble after that.
What about
Yeah, I think I
Connor?
think after week one is when I really started to see that this defense isn't going to be what it was talked up to be. I mean, we had a close game with the Rams in week one, the blown PI call with Michael Gallup there on the last second, but after we started to move into the game with the Atlanta Falcons and the Cleveland Browns, and I started to see that Dak was having to throw them back into games, and we were falling behind very quickly, turnovers to start the game, that this defense was taking a big step back. I know we lost Byron Jones in free agency. We knew that was going to take a hit in the secondary, but I thought that coming in that the front seven had improved. I mean, just like you said, we made moves for Gerald McCoy, Don Terry Poe, bringing back Eldon Smith, who was flashed now and then, but it isn't what we thought it was going to be. The offense has been steady, and we knew that the offense was going to have some firepower, especially with the addition of CD Lamb, but just not living up to expectations. And the addition of Mike McCarthy, I think Cowboys fans really thought that was going to make a huge difference, moving on from 8-8 Jason Garrett, and look where we are now.
Well, here's the thing. I think only Matt mentioned this in like a split second, but you gotta keep in mind the stupid, just unexplainable luck that the Cowboys, or bad luck that the Cowboys have had with injuries. If you think you lost Tyron
Terrible.
Smith, Lyle Collins,
Ridiculous.
Dak, of course. You lose Leighton Vander Esch for a few games. You lose Cheeto Wuzie, your best corner, when you brought in, like, you're gonna play cornerback by committee, and you lose your best corner, even though Cheeto is not like a top, he's
He's
not
not
a
a number
Jalen
one.
Ramsey. Yeah, he's not a Stephon Gilmore, he's not a tie-end corner, even a Pro Bowl corner, but he's still your best cornerback. And you lose him, you lose Anthony Brown. And just to me, the biggest thing is just the stupid, like, sure, the new coaching staff, sure, the lack of maybe resource management and preparing for this type of scenario, but how can you really prepare for this amount of injuries? And now second round rookie Trayvon Diggs is out for 4 to 6 weeks, right when Cheeto's coming back. So this, you can look at the 49ers, sure, you could look at other teams that have also had a lot of injuries this year, and the Broncos are a perfect example as well. But I think, like, the Cowboys are definitely, like, if you look at all the players the Cowboys have lost for significant time, that's the biggest story to me, and why I almost give a pass on this new coaching staff, especially Mike McCarthy, because what more can you do? But let's kind of, we'll get into that a little bit more. But now, besides the injuries, now let's talk about the actual players and the performance. Who what aspect has, again, injuries aside, what aspect has disappointed you guys the most in this Cowboys season so far?
Um, I guess it kind of ties into the injuries, but I would have to probably say the performance of Zeke. That's been tough to watch, especially since it seems every year from his rookie year he was, wow, this guy might be the best player in the league, not running back, like player. And then it was like slightly down, slightly down, slightly down. And now he's at the point where he's like maybe slightly above average, at least how he's playing right now. I think the only area that he's still elite at is like goal line, smash it into the end zone type running back. And that's been hard for me to watch because, I mean, he's on that huge contract. And that's what I was saying, it kind of ties into the injuries because I guess you got to give him a little bit of a pass. The offensive line is not only injured, but even when they're not injured, they weren't where they used to be. But at the same time, then you see teams like San Francisco who have a bunch of no-name guys that they find ways and they find, there's creativity there and they find ways to get them through holes and all these long runs and, things like that. And I would say the biggest disappointment for me would probably be that tied in with obviously with the injuries and probably the lack of creativity from the coaching staff, especially since Mike McCarthy taking his year off. And or I don't know if everyone thought, but at least I thought, because we were all told that he took his year off to study and improve his, everything to do with his coaching. And then there was really the team's got no creativity. So I
I
think to
kind
me,
of
when I
disagree
started
with
seeing that,
I gotta disagree with you on that, Matt, because like if you look at that game where Ben DiNucci started, you're gonna start your seventh round rookie in a Sunday night football game against your division rival, and you look like that was like, and you saw there was. I think it took until the second quarter for him to have a conventional drop back pass. So I wouldn't point.
mm,
I agree with you on the coaching staff and definitely Zeke, which I will get into in a bit as well. But in terms of creativity, I don't think that's so much the issue. At least with the offensive coaching staff, the defensive coaching staff, yeah, that has been a tremendous disappointment, especially in those like four games where they were giving up, like just getting run on all over by the Browns and the Falcons, giving 39 points to the Falcons and just letting the Washington football team run over them and all that. So yeah, from that, the defensive coaching staff, absolutely, but offensive coaching, I wouldn't blame them so much for creativity. What about you,
I
Connor? Though,
was,
what do you think your
oh,
biggest disappointment was?
I think as far as Zeke, I think you do have to point to the offensive line. I mean, you lose Travick Frederick in the offseason. He retires. Tyron Smith has been one of the best left tackles in the game, but he's been in and out of the lineup, and he's getting up there in age. And I think when you look at Zeke, he's still that steady back, but he just doesn't have that explosion anymore. At Ohio State, you saw those 20 plus, 30 plus yard runs, those game breaking runs that would set up the offense down in the red zone. And you just haven't seen that from him this year. He's had some fumbling issues. We saw that streak where I think he had a 3 game stretch. We had a fumble in each game. So you have to point to that. I mean, Zeke was the engine of this team. We always talked about Zeke is where we're going to put our bread and butter, and it just hasn't been there this year.
For sure. And Matt, sorry, what did you want to add to something before?
Oh, no, yeah, I was just going to say, because you mentioned once Danucci started, I was going to say that too. I did notice in the past couple of games, all of a sudden, there seems to be some creativity. I wish that would have been something that I feel like they maybe did that because they were scared that Danucci couldn't do it on his own, which we know he couldn't. But if they, if when Dak was there, from the start of the season, if we were doing some more creative things like that, even down to, I know it wasn't on the offense, but when was the last time? I mean, last game, was it last game? I think so, where they had that punt that he caught it and then threw it
Yeah,
over the other
that
side of the
on
field.
special
Like we
teams.
never
Yeah.
see that kind of stuff. And all
Well,
of a
we
sudden
did
in the
see
past couple games,
Yeah, but we did see the Cowboys actually go for it twice from the punting formation in that week 2
yeah,
game against Atlanta and didn't work. So you can point to that in terms of code, not in terms of going for it on fourth down, but at least putting the punt team out there to go for it and not your offense. So I agree with you
special
with
team.
some of those decisions from that standpoint. But honestly, from an offensive side of the ball, like I don't really see how you can like. I don't honestly give this coaching staff a pass. Like I'm okay with what Kellen Moore has done. I still have faith in Mike
Yeah,
McCarthy, but like you guys both said, Ezekiel Elliott, by the way, is under 4 yards a carry right now. He's a $90 million running back under 4 yards a carry, and you're telling me he's above average. I even might even argue that he's below average because, like I said, below four
hmm
yards a carry. 4 fumbles that he lost, most in the league. He also has like the most drops in the league in receiving because
yeah,
I don't know if you're. I'm old enough to remember him taking 80-yard screen passes to the house, and that little
Yeah.
dipsy doodle play action, or they'd run a fake jet sweep, and Dak would do a play action to the side of or the opposite side of the jet sweep, and then Zeke would go across the formation. They'd give him a little screen pass, and he would take it like in like
and he's
every that was
gone.
automatic for every time the Cowboys would run that play. But every time it seems that they tried to run that this year, especially in that Seattle game, I remember Zeke would be either the other team would sniff it out or Zeke would just drop the ball.
And he falls down too sometimes out of nowhere.
Yeah, and actually, I think he's also averaging the least yards after contact. So right now, Ezekiel Elliott is a back as a $90 million running back who also is getting outplayed by Tony Pollard. I think it's pretty objective at this point, especially in that Steelers game. Don't get me wrong, Zeke is good at picking up 5 yards. He'll give you eight, maybe even like he'll turn a 4 yard run into an 8 yard run or a -3 yard run into a 0 yard
Yeah.
run. But what he can't do is explode for a 15 yard run or a 50 yard run or a 90 yard run like Derrick Henry, which is a lot. Don't get me wrong. It's a lot to put on him, but you know what? I think he deserves that expectation for being a 90 million, for holding out for his money and being a top 4 pick, of course. But yeah, holding out for his money. And now here he is just, not delivering on on those expectations.
Yeah, I think you see him not being able to overcome the struggles with the offensive line, and a big discussion around the NFL nowadays is: do you give the running back that kind of contract? Do you put all your stock into a running back where we know? I mean, Zeke doesn't get hurt often, but the position often does get hurt, and we see a lot of the successful teams going to a committee or switching in and out, going to a committee back. So I just don't think that was a smart move on Jerry Jones' part to give in to Zeke, especially when we're moving to more of an aerial attack with Kellen Moore anyway. So I just didn't like the move giving Zeke his money. I'm a big Ezekiel Elliott fan. I think he brings a lot to the Cowboys. And when we were trying to hold time of possession, 2018 Cowboys, it was working, but it's not working these days.
Yeah, and also I actually like the way Zeke played in those first 2 games. He did fumble twice against Atlanta, but he was running with a purpose. He was running angry. He wasn't breaking off big runs, sure, but he was like again getting those 8 yards that the Cowboys needed on almost every time he touched the ball. And also he was effective in the receiving game because he took he basically had to get through 5 LA Rams to score a touchdown in that week 1 game. And like there's literally a picture of it, and somehow he just plowed his way through or evaded all 5 of them, and scored a touchdown like that. But we haven't seen that since the first 2 weeks of the season in Ezekiel Elliott. And that actually ties in to another thing. You talked about paying Ezekiel Elliott and paying another guy, Jalen Smith, instead of Dak and instead of Byron Jones. And that's another really big disappointment is Jalen Smith, who played at a Pro Bowl level in 2018, is now, look, he's up there in tackles, sure, but
Mm,
they're not happening close to the line of scrimmage. They're happening a good 10, 20 yards past the line
no.
of scrimmage.
Yeah, last year he was blowing up plays, and this year you just don't see that from him.
Well, I'd say more specifically 2 years ago. I remember 2 years ago, especially
Yeah.
that game
Yeah.
against the Texans with Deshaun Watson trying to sneak it on 4th and 1 to end the half for a touchdown, and just Jalen Smith comes flying like a missile out of nowhere just to knock him out of bounds right before the end zone, like to end the first half and keep Houston out of the end zone there. But yeah, just definitely for me, Zeke 100%, Jalen Smith 100%. Those are 2 contracts that are the Cowboys are going to be in trouble with going forward. But and let us move forward now. I want to talk about again with everything that this team needs right now. You look at offensive line, you look at sure quarterback. I mean, unless until Dak comes back, of course. What's it called? Receiver. I think that's one bright side is receiver, of course, which we'll
For sure.
talk a little bit more as well. But on the defensive side, defensive line, linebacker, secondary, and also again offensive line. What's the one thing that you think the Cowboys need the most?
Um, if we're talking position wise, I mean, you'd have to think it's going to be on the defensive end, obviously, unless you're going offensive line. If we're talking defense, it kind of sucks to say, but it seems like it might be linebacker. And when you look at the names of the linebackers, and let's say you didn't see the play, you might think that that was one of the stronger points of the defense.
Yeah.
And then it ends up not being that, and it sucks to see too, because like you guys were saying, when Jalen Smith had that year a couple of years ago that he was a Pro Bowler, and you were talking about the play he made against the Texans. I remember another one he made against the Saints when there was a pitch or a stretch run to Kamara, and he just covered almost the entire length of the field and just blew him up right before getting into the end zone. We haven't seen that, and with him too, I find it's kind of frustrating to watch him because he looks the part. He's jacked beyond belief. He looks super athletic, but it just doesn't ever translate into anything that you would think it would be with him. So as much as it sucks, it kind of seems like it's linebacker. Secondary, I might say, but I really like, now that he's out, Trayvon Diggs, that sucks, but I was enjoying watching him and him grow as the season went on. I know he would get burnt a bunch, but he would always make plays. And that's something that he almost seems like the opposite type of player as Byron Jones.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
but he was very interesting to watch. So we have him coming up, we'd think, if he keeps progressing whenever he comes back. The linebackers, though, those guys are sort of in their primes now, and it seems like they're almost trending in the wrong direction. So unfortunately, I think I might say linebacker.
Yeah, I
Connor.
mean, linebacker, like you said, on paper, it doesn't look like you need to address linebacker. I mean, we have Leighton Vander Esch, he's flashed for us, but he was out early with collarbone surgery, I believe. But also, I think the plan going ahead, we knew that the secondary was going to need help, and I thought that the Cowboys' plan was we're going to rush the passer, excuse me, and put pressure on opposing quarterbacks, and that'll help out the secondary. But I think if you're at least looking in the draft, there are a couple corners. Patrick Surtain out of Alabama, he's PFF's number one corner. Caleb Farley out of Virginia Tech. And offensive line, I mean, the offensive line has been a strong suit of us, and it's starting to deteriorate. So Penny Sewell at number 3 right now. If the Cowboys go into the draft, they're the number 3 pick as it stands. So he's graded as one of the best offensive linemen coming up in quite a few years. So that could be a pick. And we'll talk about later if quarterback is something we need to address. I mean, right now it looks like the Cowboys will be lucky if they win another game. So we could be picking high this year.
You mean I would say they'd be unlucky if they win another
Well,
game, because if we're looking at positives to come from the season,
exactly.
you get a premium draft pick out of it. I'm all for it. If you're gonna have a bad season like this and just get a premium pick, then hey, so be it. But I want to talk about I'm going to pinpoint this the need that the Cowboys need the most on actually defensive tackle right now, because what we've seen in the last couple of games when they've had good play at defensive tackle, everything else seems to kind of work out, because Neville Gallimore had a heck of a game against the Steelers, blowing up running plays, just not getting forklifting Maurkice Pouncey and sacking and laying a big hit on Big Ben. Um, to me, like, the defense starts and ends with the middle, right? Or it starts in the middle, and you got to
It
build on
does.
the outside of that. So the Cowboys are good at defensive end. Alden Smith, if they bring Alden Smith back, Randy Gregory's playing really, really well right now. DeMarcus Lawrence is maybe not putting up the sacks, but he's still getting pressure, and he's still like just a beast in the run game. You still have Bradley and Nye behind him. I don't know why they keep playing Dorrance Armstrong ahead of Bradley and Nye, but that's another story. But defensive end, good, right?
Mm-hmm.
But linebacker, in theory, like when Jalen and Leighton Vander Esch were at their best, they had Malik Collins in the middle playing along with Antoine Woods, even, who was playing really, really well in Marinelli's scheme. But right now, back when you had Dontari Poe getting washed out of every play, and they got like that's
Hmm.
made the job difficult for, or more difficult for, Leighton Vander Esch and Jalen Smith, which made the job more difficult for the secondary, because you don't know if you have to focus or key in on the pass or the run. So to me, the defensive tackle position, if Neville Gallimore can really solidify himself as a player for this defensive line, and especially, I mean, if Tristan Hill, again, who got hurt, but if he comes back and he could build somehow off of what he did so far this year, he wasn't great this year, but he still played okay. But if you can somehow get another really good player at defensive tackle that will just not be moved, like that 330-pound nose tackle, it just can't be moved, then that just makes the job easier for everyone else along the defense. And absolutely, corner would be, I would say, next. But if you can get good defensive tackle play, like we've seen these last two games against the Eagles and against the Steelers, then everything else can kind of fall into place. And then, of course, you need Leighton Vander Esch and Jalen Smith. Well, Leighton Vander Esch to stay healthy, and Jalen Smith to, not get lost with his eyes on every single play. But
Yeah.
but I think Jalen Smith. I'm gonna ask you guys this real quick. What if I almost had the idea of Jalen Smith at 6'2", 6'3", 250 something pounds. What if you just put him in a defensive end or outside linebacker in Mike Nolan's 3-4 ish scheme? What would that look like?
Well, I think that's what the Cowboys need to be looking to do is experiment, right? I mean, the season's in the bag. Let's see what we have in these young players. You mentioned Neville Gallimore. See what you have in our fourth round pick, corner Reggie Robinson. You mentioned Bradley Anae. Let's just see what we have. Let's look at Awuzie. Are we going to give him a contract? We need to see what we have in these young defensive players and then make a move from there. I mean, let's start experimenting now so we can look ahead to the 2021 season and figure out how we're going to solidify this defensive unit.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, like you were saying, potentially putting Jalen primarily as a rusher. I think that might be what he does best right now, anyways. I mean, when he does rush, he's effective. I know he's not rushing from an end position, but he is effective at least getting pressure on the quarterback. And I don't know if they were gonna, just put him on one of the ends like that, but that doesn't mean they can't get. I mean, like you were saying, the defense isn't as creative as maybe the offense is. Um, but you look at a team or any team that Jamal Adams has been on, where the Jets or the Seahawks, this guy's all up in the backfield and he's playing safety. So I mean, there's ways to be creative and play to certain player strengths, and I think that's something they could get better at for sure.
Yeah, and speaking of playing to your player's strengths, and yeah, just Jones Smith, I find like, look, he's not really good in coverage, and he's not the best at getting off blocks, but he still has like traits of athleticism, and he's
Hmm.
still when he's able when he has to tackle someone, he for the most part can make the tackle. It's just a matter of getting in position for that. But again, going back to putting players in positions to succeed, I want to move forward and talk a little bit about the coaching staff. We mentioned Mike McCarthy briefly before, but I want to get our thoughts on the coaching staff so far. So Mike McCarthy, I'm again willing to put a little bit of a pass on McCarthy because again,
Yeah.
him and Kellen Moore are more in charge of the offense and yeah, and yeah, just like what can you do when you're down Dak, you're down your offensive tackles, and your
It's
offensive
too
line is
early.
completely in
It's
a flux.
too early
Exactly,
to write him off.
100%. But here's the thing, Mike Nolan, on the other hand, what are our thoughts on Mike Nolan?
Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I was gonna say, I, I mean, it's tough because obviously, like you said, the team has been decimated already, and it was decimated early on in the year. So it's hard to judge him, especially since he hasn't coached. He hasn't been a defensive coordinator in a long, long time. Um, and with him, it seems to be a pretty basic defense. There's not too much, there's no bells and whistles. There's no, it's not as much scheming, at least from what I can see. And with him, I mean, if you're talking about getting rid of him after 1 year, I'm not a fan of, pulling a Cleveland Browns and every time you have a bad season, trash the entire coaching staff and get all new coaches because I don't think that helps the team. But at the same time, we're seeing the defense get a little bit better as the games go now. It sucks that we lost Diggs again, so it's going to hurt even more. But I'm not a fan of just getting rid of him just because he's been bad. Unless you have there's somebody that's up for someone has a great year, or there's another candidate that makes sense. I wouldn't just fire him to fire him. I think if it's getting better now, at least a little bit. So I don't love the way it's been so far, but I don't think you can just completely write him off right away.
So just straight up, you would not fire him going into next year.
I guess I'd have to see how the rest of the season goes, but at least
Fair.
in with my recency bias here, the past couple games they've been better than they were at the beginning. If you would ask me this 3, 4 games into the season when they were giving up like 30 points a half, I may have had a different answer, but we'll see,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess.
I mean, if we're talking about the head coaching position, I agree. You don't want to be the Cleveland Browns, letting just it's a revolving door of coaches every year. You don't want that. But since we're talking about the defensive coordinator position, what's glaring to me this year is that we heard earlier in the season the comments about I think it was safety Xavier Woods. He said that you can't go full speed every play, and then there was rumors that the coaching staff they're not coaching properly and they're not getting prepared. Once you hear things like that out of the locker room, that's really concerning to me because you want your players ready to play. You want to keep things in house. And I mean, Mike Nolan was brought on because of Mike McCarthy's connection with him back in San Francisco back in the day. He was Nolan's offensive coordinator. So I don't like the move. I mean, you've got guys like a Wade Phillips out there. You've got like a Marvin Lewis. There are candidates out there. So I think if the defensive doesn't flash down the stretch of the season, I think you do have to look at making a move.
Yeah, I agree with I would say actually with more a little bit more with what Matt said in terms of like the recency bias because the last two games the defensive performance has been much better in terms of especially holding the Steelers and the undefeated Steelers to 24 points and I think they and even they're much better holding the run or stopping the run against the Steelers, but I think like honestly we have to see how the season plays out. I really do. I think it's
It's
just we
early.
really like Connor, yeah. If you're gonna do your homework and see that Marvin Lewis is out there and
Yeah.
see that Wade Phillips is out there and wait and willing to come in and help coach up this defense, sure. But I feel like what I don't like seeing or what I didn't like seeing is that how the talk was we're gonna put players in position to succeed. Well, is that really the case? Because you're telling you brought in Everson Griffin, who is a perennial Pro Bowler at defensive end. You're telling him take a hand off the ground. You're an outside linebacker now. You're telling Demarcus Lawrence, who's also been a perennial Pro Bowler defensive end, take a hand off the ground. You're a linebacker now. But on the flip side of that, guys like Randy Gregory, guys like Alden Smith, they've actually been they've thrived with that so far. Alden Smith has
Hmm.
been banged up recently and not and kind of plateaued in production. Also, he's been out of the league for 2-3 years,
He's
but
been the lone bright spot this year
yeah,
on the
yeah, Alden
line.
Smith and Randy Gregory, but I just think that this defense needs, and like you said, also with Jalen Smith being completely lost, I think if for guys like Jalen Smith and even Leighton Vander Esch, guys that have to be the brains of the defense type of thing and run it from the field, like be the quarterbacks of the defense. I think if they have another offseason, like a full offseason to figure out and really understand what their role is in this defense, it will benefit them big time. Because that's another question I actually want to ask you guys. Just real quick, tell me, would you fault the coaching staff, the lack of talented players, or the short off season for the performance on the defensive side? What would you say? Which one of
It's
those
a it's
three?
a mix of it's a mix of everything for me, Mike. I mean, the thing about, we do have to put some of the onus on Mike McCarthy. I mean, this is, I don't want, like we said, we don't want to make decisions just yet, but this is starting to look like the last couple of years in Green Bay, where the offense was explosive with Aaron Rodgers. And mind you, Dak Prescott isn't Aaron Rodgers, but it was always have Aaron Rodgers having to throw them back in the games. The defense is giving up 30, 40 points in playoffs games. So I think Mike McCarthy does have to take a good look at the defense and get more defensive minded. We know that he's an offensive minded head coach, but I mean, if you're going to bring in Mike Nolan, you have to have your voice heard as well.
Yeah, I don't love the idea of. I mean, I agree that he's an offensive minded coach, but if you're going to be hired as a head coach, I don't like the excuse of like, oh yeah, well, I mean, the defense isn't doing that because he's an offensive-minded coach. I mean, you got to figure it out.
Exactly.
And I don't love the excuse of it's a short off season, because it was a short off season for everyone. And I get that it was hard, or that obviously it was harder than if you had your full training camp and your full off season and everything. But there's other defenses in the league that are playing well. And obviously they don't have the injuries that we have, but
Exactly that. And
I
if I may
think that
say,
that
also they have
yeah.
not all teams have also completely cleaned house with their coaching staff also. So I'm saying short offseason in the standpoint that you had a short amount of time to go from Marinelli's system to now Mike Nolan's system, and this like hybrid 3-4-4-3 sort of
Yeah.
whatever system, you know?
Yeah, it's tough. And I think for the majority, or not for the majority, but at least for the majority of the key players on our defense, I think that's the first time that they had all had that type of change at the coaching staff too. I know like on the offense, we had a couple different offensive coordinators in the past couple of years, but on the defense, Rob Marinelli's been there for a while, has he not?
Yeah, Rod
So
Marinelli was it was Marinelli and Kiffin. Kiffin led the defense in 2013, but Marinelli was calling the defense since 2014. So there has been a lot of stability at on the defensive side. But yeah, just it was also a huge nightmare with the coaching staff on the defensive side last year in terms of, I forget the linebacker coach, but it was between Chris Richard and Marinelli and the play. Like it wasn't fun. But now I think honestly it's more yeah, Connor, I would say it's a combination of all three, but if I had to choose one, I would really say it's the short off season, because again, you're putting an entire different system in these players' minds that they have to adjust to, it, they have to figure out and understand their role in. And I would, again, if we see more performances like the Philly and Pittsburgh game on the for this defense for the rest of the season, then I would be willing to give Mike Nolan another year and see if a full offseason can help these players really, come to terms with their role and what they're going to do in this defense. But if it's going to be more of like the Washington game, the Arizona game, the Atlanta game, the Cleveland game, well then yeah, I'm willing, if I do my homework and I decide Marvin Lewis or Wade
yeah,
or good old Wade Phillips is the way to go. It would be awesome to welcome back good old Wade Phillips, but yeah, I would definitely look into that as well. Now let's turn this around a little bit. We've been talking about the reasons why the Cowboys are now 2-7, but let's talk about the
Yep.
things we've been most impressed with. So what is the positive things that you've seen so far this season?
Well, I think CD Lamb has been a revelation. I mean, a lot of talking heads after the draft, they said, "Well, the offense was good last year. Why you need to load up on defense?" But CD Lamb has not disappointed. I mean, he leads the league in slot receiving yards, just ahead of Cole Beasley and Tyler Boyd. He leads rookies in receptions. He's second, just behind Justin Jefferson. And I think when you're looking ahead, Michael Gallup, he's going to be a free agent next year, I believe.
The year
Next
after
year.
next.
The year after next. So I mean, CeeDee Lamb is looking like a true number one receiver to me. And Amari Cooper hasn't disappointed either. I mean, he's on pace for 100 catches, 1,000 yards. Mind you, that's going to be with Garrett Gilbert now. But CeeDee Lamb has been a revelation. I think a lot of people didn't realize that there were going to be a lot of targets available with losing Randall Cobb, losing Jason Witten. And sometimes you need to just make your strength stronger. And I didn't think there was anyone in the draft that you could just pick a defensive player, maybe a Clavion Chase on, or a Damon Arnett, but not someone who's going to contribute right away. So I didn't mind the CeeDee Lamb pick at 17 at all.
Yeah, I love that pick, and I think it's been proven that he was probably the right pick there. I know everyone's saying, "Oh, you put up all these points and you still lose the games," especially when we had Dak. Now maybe we're not putting up so many points, but I've loved watching him. I think I love Cooper too. Gallup is just this. He'll have 2 catches one game, but then he'll go 3 catches for like 90 yards another game, and he just looks fantastic when he looks good. But Cooper, there's that weird thing with Cooper where sometimes when it's crunch time, he'll be off the field, or sometimes when it's crunch time, he'll drop a pass. I haven't seen that type of stuff from CD. So I think he can probably end up being more consistent and more of a true, reliable number one than Cooper, as much as I love him. And what I love seeing with Lamb is I think it shows how much he knows how to play just the position, because when you see him out there, he doesn't look blazing fast, but he gets so
No.
open. He gets so open when he catches some of these balls. He's got like 10 plus yards before anyone even gets near him. So I love seeing that. And like I said before, I was really starting to enjoy watching Diggs. I know Trayvon Diggs would get burned a bunch, but he's kind of that player. He really reminds me of like a Marcus Peters kind of guy, where he might lead the league in interceptions, but then he'll get burnt a bunch. And this is only his rookie year. So I think that he'll get a lot better. I think we might have a real player on our hands with him. And then just a minor one after Jarwin went down, and everyone thought that Jarwin was going to be this big, fast, the opposite of Jason Witten, and possibly be
Mm-hmm.
like a semi-deep threat little tight end there. Dalton Schultz has been really, really consistent there. I know, again, we've been like 3, 4 quarterbacks down now, but Dalton Schultz is looking like a decent player. So I've really
Dak
like
was
seeing him too.
targeting him quite a bit
Yeah,
before he went down.
yeah,
Yeah, honestly, like all those things, I would say specifically like the performance of this draft class so far. Like you said, Trayvon Diggs getting burned, but also coming back, making plays, showing fight, stepping up in the run game to tackle as a corner. And also, like you said, CeeDee Lamb, he did have a boo-boo in the game against the Steelers with the fumble there, but it happens with rookies. But definitely he's going to be a stud. Just the way what the receiving core is capable of. And like you
mhm,
said, Dalton Schultz, I was going to throw that out there as well. But what I really, really want to look forward to for the rest of this year is the performance of the entirety of this draft class. So I want to see more. I want to see more from Neville Gallimore, like from last game. I want to see him keep that up. I want to see. I don't know if we'll see Reggie Robinson on the field that much, but I hope Tyler Biotish who's out with a hamstring
yeah.
injury right now. Hopefully he could come back and really assert his starting role at center. Yeah, just the position, just the way there was an awesome draft by the Cowboys, and I want to see these rookies continue to step up and perform, and not win games, but perform. Because we want to try to get as high of a draft pick as possible from this. And that actually will bring me to my very next question. We have about 7 minutes here. But Jerry and Steven said on the radio this week that quarterback, if they're in the top three, quarterback is not an option at the top three of the draft. So now, with that being said, real quick, what was your take on Dak Prescott, sign and keep Dak Prescott long term, or draft Justin Fields if the Cowboys find themselves in a position to do so?
Yeah, this is tough because I love Dak. I don't necessarily love him at 40 plus $1 million, but I really do love Dak. I think he's gotten better. I think you see, I mean, everyone knew he was a great leader, but I think you saw really what he meant to this team. And the second he went down, players were calling out the coaching staff, and it looked like some of the team had given up, and they didn't show that type of stuff when Dak was on the field. So he brings a lot more than just his play. But at the same time, in this day and age with, the Mahomes and the Deshaun Watsons, if you want to win a Super Bowl, you have to have that elite talent at that position. Where I don't necessarily think he's the elite talent. I think he can probably win one with the team around him. But when he costs that much money, if they are going to pay him, I don't know if they can do that. So as much as I love Dak, I wouldn't be against. Let's say we can get Fields. And I mean, Lawrence, we're probably not going to get the first pick. If you can get Fields and they're going to commit to spending that money they would have spent on Dak to bring up the rest of the team, I could see that happening. I could see
Yeah.
that maybe making more sense.
Yeah, and it really does come down to the money. I mean, I think the Cowboys missed out on their chance when Dak was on a very cheap rookie deal to put the pieces around him, and they did try, but I think we came up short. And now that it's Dak's time to get paid, would looking at a rookie quarterback who's going to be on a rookie deal, would that be the best route moving forward, especially since we've overpaid? I mean, we paid Amari Cooper, we paid Jalen Smith. I mean, teams we see teams do it in the NFL a lot where they have that quarterback on a rookie deal, and that's when they really take advantage of that time. Now, is it Justin Fields going to come in and lead us to a Super Bowl? Is he even going to be better than Dak, who's to me a top 10 quarterback? I mean, Dak, you saw the flashes. He's improved so much since his rookie season. You see him improve his accuracy, his arm strength. He's pushing the ball down the field. But I just feel like sometimes he doesn't put the exclamation point on it, and he doesn't bring us all the way home. And that's what you get in an elite quarterback. I mean, if you get a opportunity for Trevor Lawrence, mind you, we went the Jets are obviously slotted for that position. But if you do, I don't think you can pass up on it.
Man, I disagree with you guys both on that. I think Dak is definitely the guy that is going, like, look at Russell Wilson where he came from and how he was a third round pick, and he had to really make his way in 5 years to become an MVP level quarterback. And I definitely think Dak has the talent, and also more importantly the mental ability and the intangibles to achieve that. And Dak has brought the Cowboys back to winning games many times before in 2018, 2016, even 2017, just not so much in 2019, 2020. But for me, that being said, I think Dak is the guy, and Dak has to be the guy the Cowboys should commit to if it weren't for money. Because here's the thing: the
Exactly.
Cowboys screwed themselves by paying Jalen Smith and by paying Jalen Smith and Ezekiel Elliott and not Byron Jones and Dak Prescott on the cheap. So the Cowboys, by saying, but by Jerry and Steven saying that Dak's their guy and quarterback's on option, that to me honestly is the same as the Jets front office saying, oh, Adam Gase is an offensive genius. They're just saying that to protect their guy, and
They
and
have to
really
say that
they
right
would
now.
be, yeah, they would be wrong to not do their homework at the quarterback position in terms of Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence if they have the opportunity to draft Lawrence. But to me, the best case scenario is either Justin Fields at 2 if the Cowboys can somehow lose more games than the Jags, Justin Fields at 2, or trade down to like the 6th spot or the 7th spot, and even better, be ahead of the Giants. If the Cowboys can force the Giants to keep Daniel Jones at quarterback or have to mortgage their entire future just to trade up above the Cowboys, that would be a dream scenario for me. Just really, like, this season would be a win if the Cowboys can be worse than the Giants, can have a lower record than the Giants and force them to keep Daniel Jones. But yeah, I would
Yeah.
say it's either Justin Fields on a cheap rookie deal, assuming that you did your homework and you see that he will be better than Dak, or you pay Dak and you trade down and you pray to God that Zeke and Jalen will be better for you next year, and you try to get out of those deals in 2 or 3 years if you
Well,
can.
yeah. Well, that's
If
the
it makes
thing, right?
sense.
Is Dak going to be that elite quarterback that's going to overcome the defense? I mean, you really have to look at that. I believe in him. I mean, coming into the league, he's just behind in total wins. He's just behind Russell Wilson and Tom Brady, which is amazing. But he's also 6-11 in his last 17 starts. So big
Hey,
decisions.
yeah, we'll see going forward. But yeah, so for this weekend, Cowboys fans, we got to cheer for the Jets over the Dolphins. We got to cheer for the Jaguars over the Packers somehow. We got to cheer for the Giants over the Eagles, Washington football team over Detroit, and Houston over Cleveland to really make sure the Cowboys maintain their top 3 position for the draft.
Yeah.
But hey guys, thank you so much for joining us on this Cowboys bye week special here. And of course, it's Movember, so and I personally am running a Movember fund, so I'd really appreciate if you could donate. If listeners and viewers can donate to that as well, I'll include that in the description below. It's for a great cause for men's mental health and prostate cancer research. And yeah, thank you so much again, guys, for joining. Have a lovely weekend. This has been a Cowboys bye week special of Langer at the mic. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again next time.